Welcome to course 010, Seeing Your Facility the Way Your Guests See It. My name is Tim Kuhl, and I'll be the instructor today for this course brought to you by the Council for Facility Stewardship. So let's get into this and kind of talk through what do I mean by this. Most of you as facility stewards are very concerned with taking care of the buildings, making sure that they're operating well. And too often we forget that one of our roles is making sure that the facilities are not just functioning well, but that they also are going to communicate a story. And in some of our other coursework, you'll learn more about storytelling and first impressions and whatnot. But today is kind of a foundational course as to what does your church have? Does your church have guests or visitors? And so let's look at that. Does your church have guests or visitors? You may be thinking, Tim, that sounds like a play on words. And in some ways it is, but words mean things. If you've done any writing in the past or even listening to people talk, their specific words mean things. So let's explore what I mean by, does your church have guests or visitors? There's a significant paradigm that needs to shift in our mind. This is a personal opinion of mine that I believe that words mean things. They're going to mean things to different people, and how we convey these words will impact those people that are our guests at church. So what's your first reaction? If you pulled into a parking lot and you saw one of these two signs, welcome guest parking or visitor parking only, do you have an immediate reaction? Do you have a thought? Does a reaction come over you as to, oh, I feel welcomed, or okay, maybe they didn't think that much about me before I got here? What is your first reaction? Take just a moment and think about that. So to put some things in perspective, how many of you have when you're doing an event, have a visitor of honor? Now, we generally have guests of honor. I'm a regular blogger. Most of you know that. And so we do guest blogs. We don't do visitor blogs. I don't know a single person that has a visitor bedroom. Most of you have guest bedrooms. Same thing true with a guest bathroom or a guest speaker, guest appearance. We rarely use the term visitor when we're referring to these kind of hospitality type things. So why is it that we want to use the word visitor when we're talking about our church? So a visitor is typically somebody who comes and goes without much preparation on our part or much thought thereafter. It's somebody that comes, I've actually joked to people saying, yeah, a visitor is someone like an in-law that you didn't give a lot of thought to, and you're actually pretty happy when they leave. But seriously, visitors are generally someone that comes and goes. You haven't given a lot of forethought. You haven't done a lot of prep. You weren't expecting really them to show up. They just happen to show up. Now, a guest, on the other hand, is typically a person who is cared for and has been intentionally prepared to attend. Most of the times, the guest is somebody who is a participant, person looking for a specific experience. Now, when we talk about someone that you have prepared for, you may not know that that particular person was coming to your church over the weekend, but you knew somebody was, and so you intentionally took the necessary steps to get your facility prepared, to have your greeters prepared, to have the grounds looking good. You've taken intentionality to make sure that you are prepared for them. What happens more times than not is churches put barbed wire around their facilities without even knowing that they're doing it. There's a church outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live, that I drove by several months ago. And it was this kind of austere metal building, and it had chain link fence all around the property with razor wire on top. So nothing says welcome better than razor wire, right? But we end up putting even just a make-believe kind of barbed wire around our facilities and try to keep guests out. We try to keep people out, and I don't fully get that. I understand some people are trying to be protective about insurance claims or other things like that, but to actually close people out and not want them to be on our church grounds, I don't fully grasp that. So often we'll walk onto a site and we'll see, reserved parking, church members only. And so what are we communicating to the people that we're trying to say, hey, come and meet Jesus here? This seems a little off-putting. Now, I get it that if you're in an urban setting or in a setting where people might abuse your parking lot, or you have limited number of parking spaces for your staff, and you can't afford to have people parking all over your parking lot. And I do understand some of the liability issues. But is this really what we're trying to communicate to people that are coming to see us maybe for the very first time? So we very often talk about guest services. So we don't talk about visitor services, we talk about guest services. And so many churches over the last decade, maybe even 2 decades, have had guest service ministry opportunities. And that has a wide range of variety. So let's kind of think about that. And most of the times I hear people talk about it as being something that we're going to go the second mile. We're going above and beyond what people would expect as a guest to any facility. So what might be a second mile kind of interaction? So let's look at some examples of what I consider to be second mile guest services. Things like you might have special seating sections for guests, or maybe there's a special parking section. I've seen churches where they have, first-time guest parking, and they'll have signs out front that if you're a first-time guest, flash your lights, let us know, and then they kind of direct you to a specific area. They have an area where you then come and people will greet you. They know you're a first-time guest. Other churches I've seen done free t-shirts or coffee mugs, swag bags, CDs of your worship team, CDs of sermon series. I've even seen churches that will specifically have children's workers in the lobby area that will help take your kids to a class, or at least walk you back to where you can then check your kids in. And it gives you an opportunity to have an interaction with someone, gives you an opportunity to start to build a relationship with that first-time guest, set them at ease. So often we as humans, whether it's going to a church for the first time, going to a doctor's office, or the first time you've gone to a business park or someplace else, there's a level of anxiety that ends up hanging over our heads that we're just not comfortable. And so what are the things that we can do to help reduce that anxiety? And walking kids to classes is one of those things. One of the things I suggest, though, to churches is don't forget the first mile. We're easy to remember the second mile options, but there's some first mile things, such as safety. There should be a common and expected level of safety. There should not be trip hazards. There should be a sense of security, particularly if you have families with young kids. It's one of the biggest things that we've seen in churches over the last number of years is families with young children are looking for a safe environment, a environment that's secure for their children to be in. There should be a level of cleanliness. Think about what it's like in your community if you went to another social setting, another event, if you will, at another organization during the week. Is there a certain level of cleanliness that you think is indicative and maybe congruent with your community? If you're in an area where your people are used to working in Class A office buildings, and you've got parks in the area that are well manicured, think about what those kind of things are communicating to people. And do you have a similar experience when people come to your facility? Don't forget about things like efficiency and availability. People at the front door to be available, to welcome people, to make them feel welcome, to help give direction. The gift of availability is a wonderful thing. And we'll talk more about this in other courses, but availability should start somewhere out in the parking lot. Again, a first-time guest, the first time they've pulled into your parking lot, maybe. It doesn't just start at the front door. So think about those first mile experiences that a first-time guest is going to have. So for example, if I'm a first-time guest, is it more important to make sure that the toilet tissue is constantly renewed, or is it more important to have lifesavers and breath mints in the bathrooms? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that having the toilet tissue and other paper products, that's a more critical first mile type thing. The breath mints and whatnot, while I'm a fan, those are really second mile. So if you have to pick one, to me, the upper right left-hand corner is the more obvious one that you want to pick. Same thing within the bathrooms themselves. Do you want your trash receptacles overflowing? Or is it more important to have fancy hand soap that smells really good in the restrooms? I think we would all agree that as a first impression, that we would want to make sure that our restrooms are clean and tidy and neat. I think of a grocery store chain in our area, and every time I would go in there, the restrooms are clean and neat. There's not toilet paper on the floor. There's no hand towels on the floor. That makes a great first impression for me as a guest to that grocery store. And you may be saying, yeah, but grocery stores, they've got all sorts of budget. Look at all that. Well, there's some common decency, and some things such as having someone check your restrooms every 30 minutes, every hour, or at least at the very minimum between services, to make sure that things aren't overflowing. That doesn't take a whole lot of additional effort and time. And I assure you that there are people at your church that would be better equipped to do those kind of tasks than they might be to serve in your nursery. And so how do you get people involved that maybe wouldn't be best suited in a nursery to serve at your church in doing those kind of tasks? Is it more important to give out cool t-shirts to your guests, or to make sure that your carpet isn't stained with coffee, or that there's not duct tape on the carpet, that there's not trip hazards on the floor, that the floors are clean? I've shared in previous courses, I'm kind of an odd duck when I go into facilities. I look at flooring and ceilings right off the bat. And it doesn't matter if I'm going into a church or to a hotel or some other facility. Those are things that are immediate indicators as to the care of that facility. Are the carpets clean? Is the tile clean? Are there again, tape on the floor? Is there curled up areas? Are the ceiling tiles stained? Are the ceiling tiles worn? Are there other things that are a problem with ceilings and floors? To me, your first mile is to keep those areas clean. If then you have the bandwidth and the capability to go the second mile and give a t-shirt, that's fine. And we would be fully supportive of that. But make sure that you handle the first mile things first. A lot of this boils back down to the first impressions. And what's the old saying? You only get one chance to make a first impression. And I assure you that in many cases, your first time guests are going to make a decision whether or not they're coming back or not long before they hear the sermon. And so what are we doing to make that first impression? What is your role as a facility steward to help with that first impression? You may not be the one that serves the coffee. You may not be the one working in the parking lot or greeting people, but there are things that you can do during the week and in preparation for your weekend services to make that first impression the very best it possibly can be. We're going to have other courses. There are other courses on first impressions and things that need to be considered on that. But I would encourage you to go through your facility before your weekend services with the eye of a first-time guest and think through, if we had 100 new guests today, is our facility going to tell the story that we wanted to communicate? Are people going to feel welcome? Are they going to feel encouraged? Are they going to feel like they're taken care of? It is going to communicate a story to them, whether you're there to speak words or not. So this has been a short course. but I wanted to kind of lay this groundwork of thinking the difference between a guest and a visitor. Step out into your parking lot after you're done watching this and look at your signs. Do you have guest parking or visitor parking signs up? Think about what that's communicating to people when they pull in to your parking lot. Do you have other things that might be in need for a little tweak in the wording of how you're doing things? So from all of us at the Council for Facility Stewardship, I want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to watch this course. And we look forward to serving you further with other coursework and other resources. Have a great day.